A prophecy meant to prevent disaster would instead create one of the darkest tragedies in Greek mythology. A father would try to escape his fate by abandoning his own child. That child would grow into a man who would spend his life running from the very same prophecy. Neither of them knew that every choice they made to prevent it was actually bringing it closer to reality. But the tragedy of Oedipus did not begin with Oedipus. It began generations earlier, with the founder of Thebes, Cadmus. Cadmus was the brother of Europa, the princess who had disappeared after being abducted by Zeus. For months, Cadmus searched the land for his missing sister. But no matter how far he traveled, Europa was nowhere to be found. Desperate for answers, he finally made his way to the Oracle of Delphi. Yet the oracle gave him an answer he had not expected. Europa was lost to him, and Cadmus was told not to dwell on her absence. The gods had another destiny waiting for him. He was instructed to find a sacred cow, follow it wherever it traveled, and build a city on the exact spot where the animal finally came to rest. Cadmus obeyed. He found the cow nearby and followed it for days, eventually entering the region of Boeotia. There, the exhausted animal finally lay down. Cadmus had found the place chosen by the gods. Upon that very spot, he founded the city of Thebes, a city that would eventually rival Athens and Sparta in power and influence. But before his new city could prosper, Cadmus wanted the blessing of the gods. He intended to sacrifice the sacred cow to Athena, a ceremony that required water from a nearby spring. So he sent his companions to collect it. They never returned. The spring was guarded by a ferocious dragon. One by one, the beast attacked Cadmus' companions as they desperately tried to escape. Hearing their screams, Cadmus rushed toward the spring and discovered the dragon devouring his friends. Taking his spear, he charged. Cadmus drove the weapon into the beast, killing it. He had avenged his companions and defeated a monster. But without knowing it, Cadmus had also committed a terrible crime. The dragon was sacred to Mars, and the god of war demanded payment. Mars spared Cadmus' life, but sentenced him to 8 years of servitude before his crime could be forgiven. Yet while Cadmus served his punishment on Earth, another conflict was unfolding on Mount Olympus, one that would eventually bring a curse into his family. Hephaestus, the god of smithing, had discovered one of Mars' deepest secrets. His wife, Aphrodite, had been unfaithful. For years, Aphrodite and Mars had carried on a secret affair, and together they had produced a daughter named Harmonia. When Harmonia came of age and Cadmus finally completed his years of service, Mars decided to reward the man who had served him so faithfully. He offered Harmonia to Cadmus as his bride. It appeared that Cadmus' suffering was finally over. Instead, the wedding would bring something into his family that would haunt his descendants for generations. Cadmus and Harmonia held a magnificent celebration in Thebes, attended by the gods of Olympus. But one god had little reason to celebrate. Hephaestus had discovered that Harmonia was the child produced by his wife's affair with Mars. And so he arrived with a wedding present. A beautiful necklace. To everyone else, it appeared to be a magnificent gift. But Hephaestus had placed a curse upon it. Any family that possessed the necklace would suffer terrible misfortune. Cadmus and Harmonia knew nothing of the curse. They ruled Thebes for many years and had 5 children together, 4 daughters and 1 son. For a time, the House of Cadmus prospered. Then the curse began to reveal itself. Their youngest daughter, Semele, became involved with Zeus and fell pregnant with his child, Dionysus. But Semele would never live to raise him. When she saw Zeus in his true divine form, she was consumed by flames. Her sister Ino would suffer her own tragedy. Her husband, Athamas, descended into madness and killed their children, while Ino herself jumped to her death trying to escape him. Then came their sister Agave. Her son, Pentheus, eventually became the second king of Thebes after Cadmus retired. And Pentheus made a decision that would prove fatal. He banned the worship of his divine cousin Dionysus from the city. Dionysus answered the insult with horrifying revenge. The god drove the women of Thebes into a frenzy. Among them was Pentheus' own mother, Agave. Under Dionysus' influence, the women attacked the king and tore him apart, with Agave herself killing her own son while still trapped beneath the god's spell. Even the final daughter of Cadmus and Harmonia would not escape tragedy. Autonou became the mother of the hunter Actaeon, who accidentally saw the goddess Artemis bathing in the forest. For this mistake, Artemis transformed him into a deer. His own hunting dogs no longer recognized their master. They hunted him down and devoured him. One generation after another, tragedy followed the descendants of Cadmus. The beautiful necklace given to Harmonia on her wedding day continued to pass through the family, carrying its curse with it. But the darkest story connected to the House of Cadmus was still to come. Generations later, the throne of Thebes would belong to a man named Lais. And a prophecy concerning his newborn son would set in motion a tragedy so terrible that it would become one of the most famous stories in Greek mythology. That child was Oedipus. King Lais and Queen Jocasta ruled Thebes, but Lais was deeply concerned about the future of his bloodline. Seeking answers, he consulted the Oracle of Delphi. What he heard terrified him. The oracle foretold that Lais would one day die at the hands of his own son. So when Jocasta gave birth to a boy, Lais decided to make sure the prophecy could never come true. He bound the child's feet and abandoned him, hanging the infant from the branch of a tree and leaving him to die. But fate had other plans. A shepherd discovered the helpless child and rescued him. The injuries to the baby's ankles inspired his name, Oedipus, meaning swollen foot. Unable to provide the child with the life he deserved, the shepherd delivered him to the king and queen of Corinth, who could not conceive a child of their own. They raised Oedipus as their son. And for years, he knew nothing of his true parents. Oedipus enjoyed a happy childhood in Corinth. But as he grew into a young man, questions about his origins began to trouble him. Eventually, he decided to seek answers from the same place that had once terrified his biological father. The Oracle of Delphi. Oedipus wanted to know who his parents were. Instead, he received a prophecy. He was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Oedipus was horrified. Believing the prophecy referred to the king and queen of Corinth, the only parents he had ever known, he decided there was only one way to protect them. He would never return home. Oedipus left Corinth behind and began traveling across Greece. He believed he was escaping his destiny. Instead, he was walking directly toward it. His journey eventually took him toward Thebes, the city of his birth. Along the road, Oedipus reached a narrow junction where a large chariot blocked his path. The passenger was an impatient elderly man. Rather than wait, the stranger forced his chariot past Oedipus, knocking him from the road and striking him on the head with a stick. Oedipus exploded in anger. He chased after the chariot and killed those traveling aboard it, including the man who had struck him. Then he continued toward Thebes. He had no idea who the dead man really was. King Lais. His father. The first half of the prophecy had already come true. And Oedipus still believed he was running away from it. When he finally reached Thebes, he discovered a city living in terror. A monster known as the Sphinx had been sent by Hera to punish the city for the crimes of its kings. With the head of a woman, the body of a lion and the wings of a bird, the creature guarded the city and challenged anyone attempting to enter or leave. It asked them a single riddle. What animal has 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? No one had managed to answer correctly. And those who failed were killed and eaten by the Sphinx. The rulers of Thebes had become so desperate that they promised the throne to whoever could defeat the monster. Oedipus approached. The Sphinx gave him the same riddle that had killed so many before him. Oedipus thought carefully. Then he answered. Man. In the morning of life, a human is an infant and crawls on 4 limbs. At noon, in the prime of life, he walks upright on 2 legs. And in the evening of life, old age forces him to rely upon a walking stick, a 3rd leg, for support. The answer was correct. Defeated, the Sphinx threw herself from a high rock to her death. The people of Thebes celebrated. Oedipus had freed their city. He entered Thebes not as a stranger, but as a hero. And just as promised, he was crowned king. There was only one problem. The previous king had recently died. His widow needed a husband. Her name was Jocasta. Oedipus married her. Neither of them knew the truth. Oedipus had just married his own mother. The prophecy was complete. For years, Oedipus and Jocasta lived together and had several children. The man who had dedicated his life to preventing the oracle's prediction had fulfilled every part of it without ever knowing. But the truth could not remain hidden forever. A plague descended upon Thebes. The gods were punishing the city for the crimes of patricide and incest committed by its king, crimes Oedipus himself still did not know he had committed. As the plague grew worse, Oedipus searched desperately for answers. And eventually, the shepherd who had rescued him as an infant revealed the truth. The king and queen of Corinth were not his biological parents. He was the abandoned son of Lais and Jocasta. Suddenly, everything became clear. The stranger Oedipus had killed on the road was his father. The woman he had married was his mother. The prophecy he had spent his entire life trying to escape had come true precisely because he had tried to escape it. Jocasta could not bear the revelation. Realizing that she had married her own son, she took her own life. Oedipus soon discovered her body. Overcome with horror and grief, he removed the golden brooches from her robe. Then he used their sharp pins to blind himself. The hero who had once saved Thebes was now driven from it. Disgusted by what had been revealed, the people exiled their king. Only his daughter Antigone remained beside him. Blind and poor, Oedipus spent his remaining years wandering the land as a beggar, mocked and abused by those who recognized him. His daughter became his only comfort. And eventually, Oedipus died an old man, having learned the same lesson that had followed his family for generations. No mortal could outrun their fate. King Lais tried to prevent the prophecy by abandoning his son. Oedipus tried to prevent it by abandoning the only home he had ever known. Both believed they were changing their destinies. Instead, every decision brought them closer to exactly what the oracle had predicted. And so the House of Cadmus, founded by a hero who had once followed the will of the gods, became one of the most tragic bloodlines in Greek mythology. The story of Oedipus would survive for thousands of years, eventually influencing the work of Sigmund Freud, who named his famous Oedipus complex after the ancient king. But in the original myth, Oedipus never desired the fate that awaited him. He spent his life trying to escape it. And that was precisely what made his story a tragedy.